Buddy, is now 6:30, and welcome to the Lincoln County Courthouse. This meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. This meeting is streamed live, and when adjourned, it will be posted and available at any time at lincolncountysd.org. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain the proposal in further detail and to answer any question from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first in persons of support of the application, and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on rezoning applications will be scheduled for additional public hearing during the upcoming County Board of Commissioners. Decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 days. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, Planning Commission, we will start with roll call. Please state your name for the record.
Scott Green.
Todd Boots.
Mike Poppins.
Jerry Jungling.
Marlene Sweeter.
All right, we do have a quorum for the night. Next, the Planning Commission will now approve the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, Mr. Brown?
None, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you much. I will ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved. Green.
Second, Boots.
All right, any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will take a voice vote. Ms. Sweeter?
Yes.
Mr. Boots?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
And Mr. Poppins?
Yes.
And Mr. Jungling is also a yes. That passes. Planning Commission will next approve the meeting agenda. Are there any, would you do that? Oh, yeah. Is there any meeting changes to the agenda?
None, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second, Poppins.
All right, thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will do roll call. Commissioner Sweeter?
Yes.
Commissioner Boots?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. That passes. All right, our next item is public input for non-agenda items. Before starting, I'd like to remind attendees that the commission will be unable to provide any answers at this time. All comments will be included in the record and will be accessible through the Lincoln County website once the live stream is posted. I will now ask for any comments that are not on the agenda.
Oh, they're gonna make it easy on us.
Okay. All right, seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input. And we'll go on to our first item, conditional use permit, USE 00672023.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recuse myself from this.
Thank you.
Good evening, Toby Brown, representing County Planning. This item before you this evening is a conditional use permit for a contractor shop and storage yard. If you recall, this item was carried over from last month's agenda. I'll get into a little bit more the update to that. Subject property is adjacent to the city of T towards the west. Subject property is zoned I-1 light industrial. Subject property is currently vacant. The properties, there's essentially 4 lots along this development that are all owned by the same landowner. The landowner is currently petitioning conditional use permit for the northern lot. This lot would be housing a 11,220 square foot building, which would be utilized for a contractor shop and storage yard. As you recall, last month is that there was the city council from the city of T denied the site plan for this. We do have a standing I'll call an informal agreement with the city of T that they are involved in reviewing site plans for properties that are outside of their jurisdiction, but within their subdivision or plating authority. The city council, from my understanding, had some questions about the proposed uses there. And so they did reconsider that at their meeting this month. And the applicant was in attendance and did go through a lot of the questions and the things that the city council had. The city council did approve the site plan as submitted to the county. Again, this is a proposal for a contractor shop and storage yard. There is a contractor shop directly adjacent to the property to the west. As I mentioned, this property is zoned I-1 light industrial. Contractor shop is allowed through a conditional use permit. This site is within an established industrial park, the Southwest Industrial Park. The majority of it is already developed except for the 4 lots that the landowner owns. Access to this site will be off of Sunrise Avenue, which is directly adjacent to the west of this property. As you recall, for contractor shops, there's no specific performance standards for that type of a use. However, they just have to meet the general requirements for area, lot, and yard regulations. So staff did review this application, did identify that the proposed application would be consistent with the area and consistent with the comprehensive plan as well as the zoning regulations, as I mentioned. So staff does recommend approval of this application, contingent on the 6 conditions that were placed in the staff analysis. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and talk about their proposal.
Chad Javers, 6900 Joven Circle, Sioux Falls. Looking at doing a project for a customer of mine right off Sundowner Avenue on Sunrise. We've done quite a few, as you guys know, in this area. Went back through the motions and got in the good graces of T, if you will, and so they gave me their blessing. So otherwise, it's pretty straightforward with everything else that we've done here. So.
Thank you, Mr. Javers. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
I think all questions are answered excluding the city's approval of the site plan, and that's been done now, so I have no further questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Javers, you're okay with the 6 conditional use permits?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right, with that, I'll ask for anybody in support of the application, please come forward and talk. All right, seeing none, I'll ask for anybody in opposition of the application. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I will ask for a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I'll offer that motion
Second, Green.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
to approve with the 6 conditions.
With the 6 conditions, correct. Any discussion, commission? All right, the only thing I say is if it's all right with the city of T and in their growth boundary and their extension, I'm good with that too. So, all right, I'll do roll for the approval with 6 conditions. Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. Congrats, Jed. All right, with that, we will move on to the next one, which is, action item is a rezone, RZNE 00692023.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is a change of zone or a rezone application from the RR, or from the A1 and the RC Rec Conservation District to the RR Rural Residential District. Subject property is approximately 3 miles directly east of the city of Harrisburg's corporate limits. Comprehensive plan identifies this property as future agricultural area. However, this property is within the plating subdivision authority of the city of Harrisburg. Their growth area has expanded since the comprehensive plan was adopted. As I mentioned, the subject property is zoned, portion of it is zoned RC Rec Conservation, which would be to the north part of the lot. The remainder of the lot is zoned A1 agricultural. Subject property that we're looking at is approximately 9.59 acres. It'd be 3 parcel lots. These 3 parcel lots were part of what I'll call a almost 15-acre parcel that included the residential dwelling directly to the south. The 3 lots were platted in September of this year. Again, as I mentioned, the platting jurisdiction is the city of Harrisburg. So the city of Harrisburg did plat essentially the 1 lot into 4 lots, but the 3 lots are the ones that are undeveloped and are being petitioned by the applicant for change of zone. The 4th lot, which would be where the existing house is on there, that of course has a building eligibility on it or an existing house on it, so that one was not petitioned for the change of zone. As you can see, primarily the 3 lots are what we'll call just undeveloped at this time. I'll go back to a little bit here. There is 2 developments directly to the west and to the southwest. This would be Meadow Ridge Addition and Meadow Ridge Second Edition. Meadow Ridge Addition was developed prior to density zoning, or platted prior to density zoning, prior to 1995. In fact, it was platted essentially the same month that it became effective, or density zoning, just before it became effective. And so those lots are all zoned A1 agricultural, as well as Meadow Ridge Second Edition. Those lots were developed after density zoning, but were developed through building eligibility transfers. I believe there was 6 building eligibility transfers in the area over there. So all of that existing development is what I'll call large lot subdivisions, but they're all zoned A1 agricultural, so there is no like zoning in that area. However, as you can see, there is like zoning to the north across the road, and those were one of those was the parcels that was brought before you last month for a change of zone to planned development. But essentially, there are 2 parcels to the north adjacent that are like zoned, are rural residential. The applicant did submit a concept plan with the application. As I mentioned, there was a plat approved by the city of Harrisburg that established the 3 lots that are the ones petitioned for annexation, as well as the applicant did work with the township to identify what I'll call driveway accesses into the lots. And so the township proposed driveways that would be shared spaces. There wouldn't be 3 individual driveways off of the property. So as far as analysis in the staff report, staff did identify that, again, that this application is not consistent with the comprehensive plan that governs lower density or the 1 per quarter regulations. As I did mention, though, that this would not be considered a spot zoning under the comprehensive plan because there is like zoning adjacent to this property to the north. However, when you look at the city of Harrisburg's comprehensive plan, they discourage premature development outside of their growth area or outside of their city limits primarily, unless it would be platting and developing of lots that would be the 1 per quarter. So from that standpoint, staff's analysis, it's not consistent with the city of Harrisburg's comprehensive plan, as well as the county's comprehensive plan. As well as did identify that with this proposal, the lots that you see are approximately 3 acres in size, but there would be no limit. As you're aware, you can subdivide those down to 1 acre, and then a building permit could be issued to build a house once it's been zoned rural residential. Granted, that's probably not the intent of the applicant, but just making sure that everyone's aware that that can be done. And the county has no jurisdiction over that because the city of Harrisburg has jurisdiction over the platting of the property. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for staff at this time. But per the staff analysis, staff did recommend denial of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and talk about their proposal.
Thank you. My name is Rob Kurtenbach, and I am at 28784 472nd Avenue. That's a Beersford address. The subject property is located, as you know, in the southwest corner of 273rd Street and 479th Avenue, looking to rezone 3 lots from ag to rural residential to allow for 1 single-family home to go on each lot. My wife and I bought this property with the intent that we would eventually tear down the old farmhouse, which is on parcel 4. We would tear that down and build our own personal home there. We love the Lake Elvin area, as I'm sure many of you do as well. As part of the process, I worked, Toby's touched on a lot of this, but I worked with the Dayton Township to get the necessary approval for 1 additional access point that the 2 north lots will share, which would be parcel 1 and 2 on the map. There is an existing, or actually my original hope was for each lot to have their own access, but after discussion with the township, it was agreed that the north 2 lots would share, and I'm okay with that. The existing access point that sits between parcel 2 and 3 will get moved down to the south just a little bit. That will give parcel 3 its own access, and again, parcels 1 and 2 would share that one access, the new additional access. The township has approved that and signed off on those plans already. Again, as Toby mentioned, the land is on the edge of the subdivision authority boundary with the city of Harrisburg. I've worked with the city to properly subdivide this. This plat is approved and signed and filed with the county. The city of Harrisburg has expressed their support of this rezone throughout the replatting process, and even in recent conversations with Toby, they have maintained their support of this rezone. I talked with Andrew as early as Friday, and he affirmed his support for this. This is not a spot zoning. This land is contiguous to existing rural residential land that is directly to the north. I also believe if we could zoom out this entire quarter of land where these couple other subdivisions are, I do believe if it was one owner developer that had that entire quarter at the time that they did that, I would have to believe these 15 acres would have been a part of that and likely would already have existing homes on it. In this case, it was owned by a different family that owned about 15 acres. And so therefore it was not included as part of the Meadows Ridge or Meadows Ridge Second Edition. Yeah, all we're looking to do is to simply put 3 more single-family homes on that. I am actively working with an attorney to create covenants for these 4 lots. It will include that they have to have a minimum of 1,800 square feet, potentially 2,000, still finalizing that, but it's got to have at least 1,800 square feet on the main level. There will be no ability to further subdivide the lots as far as the covenants are going to go. They will also be required to contribute to dust control along 479th Avenue on those lots. That's me wanting that. That's not a requirement from anyone. And only 1 single-family home and potentially an outbuilding would be allowed on each site. Each of these homes will be $1 million in value or higher based on the requirements I intend to include in the covenants, which is good news for property taxes and neighboring home values. As I mentioned before, my wife and I intend to build our own dream home on the southernmost parcel as part of this, which is where the existing home is. We, as much or as more as anyone, want to ensure additional homes that are built will be aesthetically pleasing and fit the neighborhood, as we will eventually be driving by those every day ourselves. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? See a couple thoughts maybe brewing down on this end over here. All right, thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
All right, with that, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application, please come forward and show your support. All right, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the application, please come forward.
My name is Rebecca Johnson, 47890 Prairie Circle in Harrisburg. I am in Meadow Ridge 2, or Meadow Ridge 2nd. Once this is rezoned rural residential, there's nothing stopping up to, when I looked at this plat, I was looking at a full 15 acres. So when I look at that, I look at the possibility of up to 15 homes being on that property. When I bought my property, 8.5 acres, I saw one housing eligibility and I didn't see dollar signs. I saw peace, I saw serenity, I saw game fish and parks behind me, I saw just a beautiful place to be able to stand on my back deck and look out the window. I hope that you guys protect us from the people who keep seeing dollar signs in this area. It's just, it doesn't fit. A couple of my neighbors couldn't be here, like last time. This letter is from Jess and John Cook, C-O-O-K. They are at 47898 Prairie Circle, also Meadow Ridge Second, and this is what Jess and John has wrote. To whom it may concern, I write this letter with the strongest possible objection to the rezoning request of 273rd and 479th. I have concerns over the consequences of such a rezoning. This rezoning would remove protections on the land and allow them to place 15 houses without reapplication. We all know how these things go, and if there is any doubt, look to our neighbors in Sioux Falls. Today it's 4 houses, tomorrow it's 15, and next week it will be a strip mall or a 4-lane highway. While the current owners may have the best of intentions about the future, plans change, fortunes change, owners change, good intentions frequently have ways of not working out. The people here do not want this. We moved here and live here to not be congested, to not have to worry about what's going to be built next, to live where the environment is clean, the roads are clear, the nights are quiet, and our children can play. The rezoning laws exist to protect the community from things it does not want, from things that will be harmful to the area, from predators who will exploit the community for their benefit. My neighbors have had plans for things like granny flats in barns and storage sheds denied. They were denied to maintain the way of life in our community and prevent the potential for exploitation. These laws should once again protect us from those who would seek their gain through our misfortune. To our future neighbors, I say welcome to the community. It's a wonderful place to call home. But come to the community as it is. Be here with us, and you will understand why we don't want it to change. The zoning laws should stand, and I ask the committee to again protect us from the exploitation of our community and deny this application. That's from Jess and Jonathan Cook. If you want to build your dream home there, I welcome you with open arms. I just don't want to see, okay, sorry. If there's a dream home there with the one eligibility that's there, that's fine. I welcome all of those people with open arms. But as soon as that's rezoned rural residential, then what's stopping the property from the south, which is 10 acres, rural residential, there's another 10 houses. We could do 8 houses on our property. We just need to stop this and leave it as a nice rural residential neighborhood as it sits, not event centers and huge developments. I appreciate you hearing me.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else in opposition of the application out there who'd like to speak?
Hi, my name's Leonard Iwinski. I live at 27327 479th Avenue, Harrisburg. I live right next door. I know Rob, I met him, seems like a nice guy. Originally, he told me what he was gonna do, and I thought, well, yeah, okay. But then I thought, the more I had more time to reflect, there's 30 acres right across the street from there? Those 30 acres, or how many, I don't know, 20, 30 acres, could be available in the near future. And a good chance is that who owns it is gonna sell it off. So what are we gonna do, have another subdivision with another? Let's say they do the same thing, they put in that area, they put 10 houses there or 5 houses there. I mean, now we're looking at a subdivision, yeah, bigger homes, but still a subdivision. I walk that street, I moved on that street, it's a dirt road. I moved on that street so that I wouldn't get a lot of traffic, because I walk every morning and every night, literally. And that's what I'm trying to get away from, the traffic. I want the peace and quiet, the wildlife. This is a fact, the more people, the less wildlife. It's just animal nature. They want to stay away from people. But my point is that I moved out there for a specific reason. And if we allow this, then what's to say the next plot of land is gonna go for more people, excuse me. Anyways, that's my comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'll ask for anybody else in opposition of the application.
Corey Johnson, I'm at 47890 Prairie Circle. I'm 500 feet to the back side of the property. Same thing. I bought that property, well, my wife bought that property and I just helped out. We built that, we knew it was ag land when we did ours. We looked at doing, you know, I got 8.5 acres. Am I gonna split mine into two now because he did it and sell it off? I'm a contractor, I could do that. You can allow that. If you're gonna allow that, you know, everybody in my neighborhood could be selling all their land off. That's not why I moved out there. I just want you to, I would suggest, and then I would deny this request. One eligibility is what came with it. That's what my land got. Merlin, who I bought my land from, took that from his other land over there and moved it over there. Just keep it fair. That's the way we got it. If you're gonna do that, you know, change the whole comprehensive plan. If we're gonna allow every 5 acres and 10 acres in the country to be separated out, you know, make it fair for everybody, I guess, if you're gonna do that. So I guess that's mine. I would hope you all would vote in favor of not doing this, so, thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Sandy Braun, 27395 470th Avenue, Lenox, South Dakota. I'm here representing my parents who live right next door. We will have all 3 houses butting up to our property there, if it stays only 3. I really ask you to deny this. We went through this a couple years ago and over by our house, and it was a matter of housing. We had to have housing eligibilities. I have 120 acres that we could build onto, but I know that I can't take 10 acres. We're in the T land or T comprehensive, and we could also take it and replat and do things, but knowing about the spot platting and things and having more houses out there. We didn't move out to the country to be with all the houses. We moved out to the country to be in the country. So I would ask you to deny this for now. We're also dealing with the land across the road that we still don't know what's going to happen there with traffic, and that's putting all the houses on the gravel and then all the traffic across the way. That's a lot of extra traffic that was not planned for and things also. And of course, they all said it just as well as I can, so I'm gonna leave it at that. So, but the wildlife is beautiful out there and we don't wanna lose that either, so, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in opposition of the application?
Richard Cook, C-O-O-K, 47894 Prairie Circle, Harrisburg. I think you've all done a good job. I think you've all done a good job standing up for and honoring the zoning regulations established by your predecessors. I don't always agree with the vote you have made, but you have defended the rules that are in place, and I commend you for that. One of the main tenets of the zoning regulations is, quote, to protect a vigorous agricultural industry. This parcel before you today is a viable, usable, very productive piece of farm ground and definitely does not fall in the category of, quote, where the value of the land for agricultural use is marginal. It is very productive farm ground and very valuable for that purpose. Please vote against recommend denial of this zoning measure and maintain the spirit, essence, and purpose of the established zoning regulations, just as all of his neighbors must also live with those established regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll ask anybody else in opposition of the application, please come forward. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the floor to public input, and I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
For the sake of conversation, I would make a motion to approve the application. Green.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a discussion, commission.
I think we've been fairly clear in the past on how we have interpreted the comprehensive plan and try to abide by the growing from the municipalities out and not from the outward in. And this seems to me a lot like our discussion in our last meeting, trying to go from the out in. For that reason, I would not be in support of this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Any additional conversation, discussion?
Todd Boots, I think the commissioner hit it right on the head. Again, we're growing out in, and everything's that I see, it would be better to be going out or in, just the other direction. So I would not be in support of this.
All right, commissioners, any other discussion? Guess the one thing I'll say too then to wrap it up, Commissioner Sweeter, do you have? Okay, I'll let you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand 100%, 3 acres, a nice house, eligibility and or nice house and lot, it is a lot of people's dream. But also, we do have the rules for the housing eligibilities and the way it's set up. And I know it's not officially a spot zone, but we are really trying, like the other commissioner said, grow out from municipal. The hard part is when a city comes and takes over an area, just say your area like that, it's really hard to get the city infrastructure to match up with the sewer and the existing water and add to the streets. And this is, when we make decisions up here, we are thinking 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But we have to think about that for our county, because that's, once you make that change, it can't go back, or very seldom goes back. I know we did talk about covenants and stuff like that, that we don't have control over, and rezones and whatnot, we do have control over. So, all that said, I hope the dream house goes great and everything. I'm going to vote to deny the rezone also.
This board has been very consistent on rezoning a property. Moving of eligibilities is not the circumstance here. It was used to get that eligibility for that parcel at one time or another. That being said, I would recommend everyone to stay diligent, not the word. Diligent, thank you. I'm trying to get through this meeting. Because this board, although I believe has done a very good job, sometimes there's been inconsistency when it moves up. And there's other reasons for it that the other commissioners will have for approving something that may have been denied here. This one is a little bit more unusual. It is abutting a property. It's not spot zoning. It's not completely unrealistic for property in this area to change use. There are circumstances that can be looked at that this may have a different consideration. Tonight, I'm going to vote against it. I will have a second opportunity to look at it with fellow commissioners, but tonight I will vote against it. So, thank you.
All right, with that, we will take voice roll call and vote on the motion to approve the rezone. Commissioner Sweeter,
No.
Commissioner Boots,
No.
Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Poppins,
No.
and I am also a no. So now again, the rezone, that's just a recommendation of our board to the county commission. So when they comes forward, I assume the next meeting, Mr. Brown, I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, then you can go in and talk to the board then and see if we get a different outcome. All right, thank you. Our next item is conditional use permit, USE 0072-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next item is a conditional use permit application. This conditional use permit is for a property that's approximately 5 miles would be to the west of the town of Hudson. Subject property is zoned I-1 agricultural, or A1 agricultural. Subject property is developed with a feedlot. The feedlot has been in existence since 2000. There was a transfer of the feedlot, but that is in compliance with the county and with the state regulations. Applicant has submitted an application for an agriculture-related operation involving the handling, storage, transporting, and shipping of farm products. Specifically, they're proposing to put a digester on the property, which would be which would assist or be in conjunction with the feedlot that is on the property. Staff has had some discussions with the applicant. The applicant can go into more detail about essentially the operation, how it would occur. But for staff's analysis, did look at the surrounding property, did identify that this will be going on the property of essentially a Class A feedlot in the county. The nearest house is approximately 1 mile away from this proposed operation. This property, again, is in the A1 agricultural district. The comprehensive plan does support agricultural-related uses that don't have an impact on the surrounding properties. Again, as mentioned, that this property would be essentially separated from a residential type use. So staff does recommend approval of this application with the 5 conditions that were placed in the staff analysis. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff, as well as the applicant is here this evening to go through a presentation of a little bit more of the details of essentially what the digester would involve. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff? See none. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward, and I'm kind of excited for this presentation.
Fantastic. Jared Williams, 435 Joe Hall Drive, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 48197.
Mark Hill, 435 Joe Hall Drive, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 48197. Good evening. Mark Hill, I'm co-CEO of Novia RNG. We are the owner of Five Shot RNG, which is the project company that will be, we'd like to do a renewable natural gas project at the East River Genetic Services heifer facility just outside of Hudson. What this project will entail is we're going to be taking manure from the heifer facility and digesting it in a 2.5 million gallon digester that looks very similar to the one you see from one of our Wisconsin sites that is up and operational. The manure will go in, be digested for typically north of 20 days, and out from that comes a biogas. That biogas is then processed to remove carbon dioxide and other contaminants, and it turns it into pipeline quality natural gas. This is the same natural gas that you'd burn in your house, in your furnace, in ethanol plants, or wherever there are. This is just natural gas. The only difference between renewable natural gas is this comes from a renewable source, which is animal manure. Project will support 2 full-time jobs starting in 2024 and dozens of construction jobs in 2024. Our projects lower odors from lagoons, lower methane emissions into the atmosphere, and it will produce locally produced energy, equivalent to approximately 100,000 gallons of gasoline per year, which is available for a variety of uses. Our experience, we have projects across the country. We have two in operation, one in Wisconsin, one in Michigan, two under construction. In fact, one of them is in Sioux County, Iowa, just about 35 minutes from here. We have our own internal construction and engineering teams. Currently have 36 employees, with 3 more coming on board by the end of 2023. And so some of the projects you can see down below. This will be our first project as Novia in South Dakota, with previous employers, and I have about 15 years of experience in renewable natural gas. I have done another renewable natural gas project in South Dakota. So our team, I did hit 15 recently. I need to update this. Previously, I was the vice president of operations with DT Biomass Energy. I ran 21 landfill gas energy projects, 8 dairy RNG projects for them, and currently serve as a co-CEO. Jared?
Yeah, Jared Williams, co-CEO, very similar background to Mark. We worked in natural gas or renewable natural gas space for 10 years at DT Biomass Energy. While we were there, we oversaw 21 landfill gas energy projects and 8 dairy RNG projects. So lots of experience, not the first time doing these kind of projects.
And most of our staff has decades of experience in this industry, either in natural gas, oil and gas, or actually in anaerobic digestion. Want to go through the...
Yeah, so I can give you a quick overview of the process and how all of this works. So all of the manure from the animals will be collected in the barns. There'll be vacuum trucks that go behind and suck up all of this manure. That'll be transported to a pit where we then pump it into an above-ground anaerobic digester. I'll get into some details about the digester specifically, but we heat up the manure to around 101 degrees, and we continuously stir that manure. After you heat it up and stir it, it begins to produce biogas, and that biogas is usually between 55 and 60% methane, 45% carbon dioxide. We pull that gas out of the digester with a rotary screw compressor, and then we pressurize it up and push it through some gas separation membranes. These membranes are like a big bundle of spaghetti noodles, right? A big bundle of tight fibers, and as you push the gas up through those fibers, it separates the gas into different particles based on its particle size. So the methane can pass directly through, and then your carbon dioxide and your hydrogen sulfide get separated into another stream. And so the methane, as it passes through, we can inject that right into a natural gas pipeline. Like Mark mentioned, that's natural gas. So that it would be indistinguishable from what's currently in the pipeline. The CO2 and the H2S is then sent to a thermal oxidizer. It's like a big oven that we keep about 1400 degrees, and it destroys anything in the gas before it can be released to the atmosphere. And so there's no odors, there's no visible emissions from a thermal oxidizer. Anytime that the plant is not running, we have to make sure that gas is destroyed. And so we have a flare where we will, anytime gas is not going through the plant or we are not meeting pipeline spec, we send it to this flare where it will be burned and destroyed. Also no odors, but you could see a small flame. Out of the manure that comes out of the digester is called digestate. And so it usually spends north of 17 days in the digester. This digestate comes out and it's sent back to the heifer facility where they separate the fiber. And so they can use that fiber as bedding for their animals. And so it's clean and dry at that point. And so it's kind of a closed loop process. To give you a feel for the location of this facility, this is in Eden Township. It's really on the corner of 294th Lane and 482nd Avenue. So you can just see these stars give you a feel for where it's located. You've seen this picture in the application. This gives you just a feel for where it's located at the facility. So this is where our digester and gas upgrading equipment will be located. Our flare and thermal oxidizer will be back in this location. So it's kind of tucked back in the northeast corner of the property. This is a three-dimensional view of what it will look like on the site. So we have our digester, we have a building that will house a boiler and some heat exchangers to heat up this manure. We have an electrical room, we have our gas upgrading equipment in a container. Then we have a separate compressor and some towers to remove some additional hydrogen sulfide before we inject that gas into the pipeline. Here you can see our flare and thermal oxidizer. This is just a little bit more zoomed in view of what this facility will look like and the layout of the different equipment. We are following all of the setback requirements from property boundaries, as you can see in these drawings. This is the flare and thermal oxidizer, tucked even kind of further back into that northeast corner of the property, out of the way. They're over 400 feet away from our digester. This slide gives you just a feel for some of the size of this different equipment. So that complete mix digester you can see in this picture, this is one of our projects in Michigan. The digester is about 75 feet in diameter, about 78.5 feet tall. Our equipment building will be a 30 by 70 equipment building. And then the other containers, fairly small. Our flare is a 40-foot flare, and our thermal oxidizer will be a 69-foot stack. Once again, no signs of emissions or noise coming from this different equipment.
We talked about the anaerobic digester. It's going to be 2.5 million gallons, a steel tank with the epoxy lining on the inside. We do have to get a permit from the state of South Dakota for this. We have already talked to them about this. We also have to get an air permit from the state of South Dakota and pass all their requirements for this. But this is the red one you see there, and the heifer facility gets to actually pick the colors. This farmer wanted red. That one's in Sioux County, Iowa, so just a little bit of a drive away from here. It gets leak tested. It's 18-inch thick concrete slabs on the bottom of it. And so again, this is a piece we really spent a lot of time with. We work with the state to get this properly permitted per their digester requirements. And then we're going to have an MCC, motor control center. It's like an electric room, office, and equipment building in a structure. You can see kind of, this is our Michigan project, what that structure looks like. This is a steel structure there. And for environmental compliance, this is a big deal to us. Our 2 employees, we require them to live within a response time distance to the plant. And so typically they are neighbors. This is going to be a project that we want to have in place for at least 20 years, if not more. The last thing we want to do is upset neighbors with noise, odors, and our projects that we currently have running use this identical equipment. We have received no odor complaints. We have received no noise complaints. Matter of fact, it's typically quieter than the barns that we put these up near. Most of the noise-producing equipment is located inside containers or buildings. From a safety perspective, we have emergency stops, methane detection devices, fire detection devices, hydrogen sulfide monitoring that automatically shuts down the plant and puts it into a fail to safe state on it. We have to be compliant with any construction safety requirements. Our technicians go through a series of training to properly operate the plant, to be aware of the dangers, and we do plant walkthroughs and annual meetings with first responders so that they understand how to respond to an emergency at the site. In terms of traffic, once construction is complete, it's just our employees driving in and out. There's not going to be manure being trucked in. We're not trucking in stuff from other sites. It's just 2 employee vehicles and our company pickup truck is really the only traffic that we have there. So the expected construction timeline, we're looking at starting next spring, doing leak tests and filling the digesters that summer, and first gas production in the fall of 2024, reaching a steady state operations in late 2024. And so some of the benefits we talked about previously, two highly skilled full-time jobs, a facility manager, one facility technician, construction jobs, and just ongoing work for electricians, local utilities, piping, et cetera. Our project in Morris, Iowa is creating a little bit of an economic boom in the small town there, just how much just local vendors that we have to use to do this. And so this has been a big move for agriculture and being cognizant of methane emissions and any greenhouse gases. And what I find really exciting about this is creating a domestically produced vehicle fuel from a renewable source. And then in terms of connections, where this gas is going, we are working with Northwestern Energy, which is the local utility, putting in a line going to our site from a line that they have about 1.5 miles away. That's currently looking like the most viable option for that. This line would be very similar to us asking to have, if I had a business or something and asked for natural gas service to it, that would be like this line. This is not a mega pipeline or anything like that going in. And all the routing maps we've seen thus far is following township or county right-of-ways up there. It's not our intent on any of this to claim eminent domain.
So.
That's the end of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, guys. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants?
I'll yield to other questions first,
Yes.
if there's none. Sorry, guys, you got to help me out. You're in Michigan, where? Show me on the hand where you're at.
It's right about, yeah.
All right, thank you. That helps me out. That helps me out a little
Just
bit.
outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I will share with you, my son actually worked, I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Sechi, that does digesters as well.
Yes.
I'm finding this fascinating listening from you versus what I learned from him when he was doing his internship with them last summer. He was working mostly in the Brookings, South Dakota area. It seems to be a valuable change for these farming operations of utilizing that. But it does bring a lot of questions. You indicated there will be 2 people working. What will their work schedule be? Are they on the site together? Will they alternate hours? What will there be somebody there at all times? I'm trying to get at.
So they'll work normal working hours, typically 8 to 5, that range, Monday through Friday. We do have our employees would then come in on the weekends, typically for 2 to 3 hours to do a walkthrough of the plant to make sure everything's working okay. The plant itself is automated, and that is is a large computer program that's constantly monitoring every aspect of the plant. And if anything exceeds alarm limits, it will shut down the plant, go to flare, and then there's a call out that occurs to the employees. That's why we require the employees to live nearby so they can properly respond. But the idea here is that we design and engineer things such that it is safe, and that we think through all the different outcomes. We do what's called a process hazard analysis, where we look through each piece of equipment and see if there's a failure on that piece of equipment, what then happens. That's why we have pressure relief valves in different locations on there. Our employees, one employee is on call out every day, which is why we have 2 employees at the site. And so if the plant calls at 10 p.m. and says, hey, we've got high pressure here or high temperature here, it's their duty to then respond.
And it's interesting, right? Our background was on the operations front, previous employer and operating these. And so we see the value of having good people and being able to keep those people. And so we felt 2 is really the appropriate number, right? That way somebody could have a day off. If somebody gets sick, you can rotate on call. That way you're not wed to this plant 24/7.
Question also then, so the individuals will be trained on safety protocol. What is the biggest risk factor? Explosion? Is there much volume of gas stored on the site, or is it immediately injected into the gas line?
Yeah, so very little risk of explosion and not very much gas stored on site. So that digester is full of manure all the time. So you have very little gas up in the top, actually. And then we immediately inject that gas into the pipeline. So the biggest hazard is really hydrogen sulfide. It's one of the gases that's produced as part of this reaction. And so we control that, right? So our employees wear monitors. All of the gas has to be captured and collected at all times. And so it's typically under vacuum, and then we burn that in a flare or inject it right into the pipeline.
And for everybody, hydrogen sulfide is the rotten egg smell you might get around a manure pit or lagoons. It's actually one of the benefits of doing this is rather than that hydrogen sulfide being released out of a lagoon, we're capturing it and destroying it, which is why odors are less. But frankly, that is a big piece for us. It's not a regional issue. The hydrogen sulfide dissipates really quickly. But if you were in a container or building where you had hydrogen sulfide buildup, that would be dangerous. And that's why we have hydrogen sulfide monitors in there. We wear the detectors, and they also have it's called a lone worker device, such that if an employee just went down or they had a hydrogen sulfide hit, it goes through a call-out tree through their supervisor, through the farm, and then all the way to 911 first responders.
Thank you. Also, you indicated the life expectancy, and maybe I'm extrapolating improperly, but you said maybe 20 years on this?
Yeah. The contract we're working through is 20-year contract, which is typically we do on our facilities. These type of digesters have been running over 30 years in Europe. This is a standard type in Europe that they use. It's becoming very popular here in the United States as well.
And we will continue to maintain equipment and renew it, right? So we expect to have no problem hitting 20 years.
I think we just have to have the scrutiny, because if someone had come in to suggest they wanted to put in a oil refinery or something like that, I have to look at this a little bit like that, because we're talking about a gas we're producing and injecting into it. Granted, we are taking it from an animal byproduct, but I think it has to have some of the same scrutiny as if someone was proposing an oil refinery or something in regard. So thank you for the questions, or the answers to the questions.
Yep.
Yeah, and we do have that level of scrutiny on our build, right? So we're making sure that we're meeting all of the regulations and codes and to make sure it's safe.
This is called a Class 1 Div 2 area, which means that if the gas did leak, there is a potential for explosion, and therefore our lights that we have to be Class 1 Div 2 explosion-proof lights that don't have an ignition source on it. So we typically have the state inspectors come out and look at it, and it's really not to the scale of an oil refinery, but the codes and stuff that we end up having to follow are similar to the natural gas industry.
I'll yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So do you guys already have a contract in place with like a specific cattle producer, or will it be numerous producers in the area to bring manure in from, or what's that look like?
It would just be with the one producer right there, East River Genetics. It is not our intent to truck in manure from anywhere else.
Okay.
And the contract is a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Once we get a conditional use permit in place, then we would sign the contract.
All right, makes sense. And you said it's not a mega pipeline, but the pipeline from the facility to connect into, what size pipeline is that?
That'd be up to Northwestern Natural Gas, but my estimate would be 3 to 4 inches. It'd be coming off the branch line that currently goes from the interstate pipeline to the ethanol plant, about 1.5 miles south, and then teeing up to this.
And then the gas going through that pipeline, is that under significant pressure? What type of pressure are we talking about?
We'd have to reach the same pressure in the existing pipeline that's a mile and a half south, which is, I believe, 450 PSI.
And if there did happen to be a catastrophic rupture, are there any models out there that would show like what the impact of that is?
You would have to go through the natural gas company. So the natural gas company, the local utility, would in fact own this pipeline as they do the pipeline to the south that's currently going to the ethanol plant.
So the natural gas company would own it from their main line all the way up to your facility?
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so we would not be responsible for that piece. Our responsibility ends when we inject into what's called an interconnect right there. It's basically a valve and metering station.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You talk about the two employees and having them in a close proximity. Do you have kind of a mile radius that you try to keep them within, or?
Yeah, we try to keep them within 30 minutes, right, so that they
Okay.
can respond. Depends on if they can find housing, but we have employees live up to an hour away, but they need to be able to respond within an hour.
Okay, I'm just looking at the map and the towns around there, and you talk to response times. I was just kind of curious if you had a mileage or a time frame when you wanted to make sure they could get to the site.
We currently have 3 employees 35 miles away from 35 minutes away from this location in Iowa. So the nice thing about this site is we have multiple ways to respond.
Okay, thank you. No other questions, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, just a question is, how many head of livestock do you require to put in a digester of this magnitude?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because a lot of it depends on carbon intensity scores that different regulatory agencies apply to like the benefits of what we're doing. And we tend to look at it less than number of cows and more as pounds of volatile solids. This is not a dairy. We do other projects at dairies, and typically we would need 2,000, somewhere around that range, in order to make it viable.
And how many head are at this facility then?
You'd have to ask them specifically, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question to follow up from Mr. Boots.
Yes, Commissioner.
We work with volunteer fire departments and services. Is there any training that they should be informed of with a facility like this coming into their area?
Yeah, and that's typically volunteer fire departments we work with because feedlots or dairies or any other agriculture is typically in a rural environment that has volunteer. So what we cover down on is the risks of hydrogen sulfide. Typically that we don't want them going into any of our buildings unless they know that there's an employee that's down there. I don't want them, if there's hydrogen sulfide alarms going in, risking their lives for our property. If I would like them to risk their lives for our employees' lives. And we'll go through, basically, they should be wearing an SCBA. Most fire departments already have this. An SCBA is like a above water scuba gear in some ways. When you see firefighters wearing the oxygen tank on the back, is typically what we'll have. We'll go through and say, and we'll put this on the doors for some of the electric rooms, not to use water in certain areas to put out a fire, such as our electrical rooms. If they put a bunch of water in there, it has the risk of creating an additional arc flash and more fire.
We bring these volunteer fire departments out. We give them a tour of the facility, we walk it down, make sure they know where to respond, how to respond.
But it's your firm that will be
Yep.
doing that.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so from the state's perspective, who oversees this? Is it, since it's an ag production / gas production, like who's the oversight over this?
It's the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources.
It is.
They would issue both an air permit and a digester permit. And then there are other levels of permits we have to get, sometimes at the county level or local level. I'm guessing here it'd be the county level, electrical permits, building permits, other things like that.
And then beyond that, I'm assuming is the Public Utilities Commission that does the pipeline that connects Northwestern, right?
Right, so the Public Utility Commission would oversee Northwestern,
Right.
but it wouldn't, once it transfers to us, our piece is private and outside
Right.
of theirs.
And then that's over Ag and Natural Resources.
Yep.
And have you guys filed that application already?
We have filed our air permit, and we're preparing our digester permit right now.
Okay,
And that should go in before the end of the year, the digester permit.
thank you.
My turn. I'm kind of on the other end. I'm on the electrical end. Do you have a contract with, I assume, the co-op over there to supply power? And how much power is one of your plants take?
It's typically 1,000 to 1,200 kVA, and we will work with basically a drop with. I think they actually might have done it already with a local utility.
Yes, we have our application in and they're waiting for a down payment on the transformer.
Okay. I know transformers are like 100 weeks out or 150 weeks out, so yeah.
We
So luckily they have them
Oh,
for
good,
what we need.
good.
We just need to put the down payment down.
Yeah.
Another question, I know there's renewable credits. Do this qualify for renewable credits and then you guys handle that within your company?
Yeah, it definitely qualifies for renewable credits and we would handle all of that.
Okay. That was most of my questions. You guys did a very good job of questions. Commissioners, any additional questions for the applicant?
I'll wait for public.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask for public comment on anybody in favor of the application. All right, I'll ask anybody like to speak, comment on opposition of the application.
My name is Bob Evanson, 29565 482nd Avenue. I'm not so much up in favor or against at this point. I guess I've just got questions. Which configuration are they using?
Bob, if you address us, and we'll try to get those
All right.
answers for you. Thank you.
And I guess I'm concerned, biogas contents, and he did bring that up, it's 60 to 70% methane, 30 to 40% carbon dioxide, and the rest is hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and percaptan. All harmful products if breathed. I guess if they can guarantee that none of those products will escape this facility, that would be a plus. And one thing I'd like to mention to Toby, there are two homes that are just past a half a mile past this facility. They're not a mile away, they're just a little over half a mile. They did kind of answer the carbon dioxide question. It's destroyed by some thermal process, I guess, because that's quite a bit of CO2 to get rid of. And the methane, it just seemed like you're getting ahead of the game a little bit, asking to get this built when they don't have, I mean, we all know where the pipeline is at, and it's south of them. And a couple of us here, we're right in line with that, so I'm just curious of how they think they're gonna get there, eminent domain or otherwise. And will all the contents of the lagoons be pumped to this one site? Because I know there's lagoons on both sides of the road in two different townships. So that's some questions I've got. So I guess that's it for now.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'll ask anybody else in opposition of the application. All right, seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input. And I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, would you allow a further question to the applicant?
Yes, definitely, think so.
I think everyone here is very supportive of trying to enhance agriculture. Safety, though, in light of everything else, is always on the forefront of our minds right now. Given that, can you give us a track history with your projects and their safety ratings after operation of a week, 5 years, 10 years? What is the worst case scenario you've had for an event? And what is a typical event if there is going to be one?
Okay. So our safety record, we've had no OSHA recordables for any of our employees at our sites. 2 are in operation. And in terms of violations, any environmental violations or harmful releases, I am not aware of any. In terms of a worst-case scenario, and this is something we think pretty hard about, if something really goes bad, what would happen? There's 2 scenarios. One is a gas release, and the other one would be a manure spill. Those are your probably 2 worst-case scenarios that you would have in a digester facility. And we're one of those people who plans for the worst and strives for the best, right? It doesn't happen. In terms of a gas release, if you had a full-blown pressure relief valve release off the top of the digester, we run a pressure relief valve on the top in case just you had a complete freeze up and there was no place for the gas to go. There's a vent line that goes up additional 10 feet. 12 feet. And so it's being released about 94 feet in the air. We then do air modeling on that and say, in a worst case, all my gas is just belching out the top of the digester. If I was standing on the ground, would I hit the 100 ppm OSHA limit? And the answer is no, you don't. And we do a variety of wind speeds and various other things to see if that kicks in. And that's really your probably your worst case scenario. A flare failing to light, which would trigger an alarm and a shutdown, may result in a short term. In that case, we also model that, and our flare is 40 feet tall. If you're standing on the ground, it would not be a problem. Is it a good thing? No. If we did uncontrolled releases of biogas into the atmosphere, it could cause a smell, a rotten egg smell, but it's not a harmful thing. It's something we would work extremely diligently and fast to correct. The other piece of this is this gas is already being released on farms. They come out of the lagoons. So the whole purpose of this environmentally is right now methane and hydrogen sulfide come out of these lagoons and manure pits. Our job is to take that manure before it gets to those lagoons, digest it, and get the harmful gases out of there. And then for manure spill.
And just this is highly regulated, right? So when we talk about getting an air permit from the state, there will be all kinds of conditions in that permit. And so we build extra redundancy into our facilities to make sure that we can meet the obligations of that permit, right? So we have backup igniters for our flares. We have, multiple ways to ignite if we ever have a problem. We have our valves that go to this safe position if we ever have problems. And so the PLC that's controlling the facility is monitoring hundreds of points all the time, and there's tight bands set around all of them. So if any of them get outside of those identified ranges, then it goes to a fail-safe state.
Thank you for giving a little more reassurance. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, there was a question about the 2 lagoons, one on either side of the road. Do you have an answer for that? Will you be using both lagoons?
So the dairy is responsible for the lagoons. How the manure gets to our facility is we don't take it out of the lagoons. We pump it directly from the barns. So it gets vacuumed up and then placed in a pit, and then we pump it from that pit into the digester. And so then we return that to the dairy. The dairy can do, not dairy, a heifer facility. The heifer facility can do whatever it wants with that. I think in this case, they're going to run it through screw presses, get fiber out of it, and then they use that for bedding, and then the liquid portion would go to the lagoons where it'd be field applied as appropriate.
Would it ever turn to like a biosolid and spread out in fields, as fertilizer and that also?
Yeah, so their manure management practices will not change, right? This manure will just have a, say, 17 to 25 day pit stop in our digester. So it goes into the digester, it goes right back to the lagoon. They manage the lagoons as they have been, and then the manure gets filled applied.
Understood.
And then the eminent domain piece, I think, is important, right? We certainly will not do that. The Northwestern will use their right-of-ways, and if for some reason they were not able to, then we'd have to approach landowners and try to get a private easement.
I mean, to this point, all the drawings, I've seen it using county and township right-of-ways running along the roads.
I'm going to interrupt you. Those are considered private property a lot of times. There's a lot of people, including myself, that isn't almost looked at as the same as an eminent domain taking, because that was given for other purposes, for right-of-way for road and travel. I don't think the forefathers thought we would see as much in these road ditches as we do now. So I do believe it is a right of what you'll try to do, but I do still look at it as a taking, so I will clarify that for the record.
Okay. And again, we looked at we go to the local utility and say, please provide us service. And they say, okay, this is the route we take to provide you service per our utility agreements and PUC regulations.
All right, gentlemen, any other question? All right, thank you, guys. All right, with that, we do have a first motion, and we can have a second motion and have a conversation.
You know, gentlemen, there's a lot of pros and cons on this. I think the pros of this outweigh the cons. There is risk in life about anything. I think this is worth the risk, because this is gases that are being emitted already from these facilities. We're turning it into something that is useful for all. There's going to be obviously individuals that look at it differently, but as the way I look at it today is, I think this is a benefit that, with its risks, is worth taking the chance. So I will support it.
The only thing I would say is, you know, I know you guys are from Michigan, I'm assuming you spent a little bit of time here, but, you know, people are reasonable. Hopefully you guys are taking the opportunity to engage those people that live around there, to have those conversations. You know, I know when somebody talks about putting a facility like this up in their backyard, people have questions, people have concerns. Hopefully you're taking those opportunities to engage the people that live around there and to have those conversations, because I think that goes a long way in reassurances. Trying to get answers like this in an open forum, which is great. But when a local farmer can just look you in the eye, you know, out on a site and have a conversation, I think that means a lot to them. But I do think, you know, this is something that, as we go towards renewable energies, it's, I'm with Commissioner Poppin on the risk versus the reward, if you would. I do think it is very low risk, as the facility is. So I too believe I would be in favor of the application, but.
Commission, do we have so we still need a motion and a second?
I was wondering, you had said we had one, and I was like,
We had a first, I don't think we had a second.
I'll second the motion too.
Is that correct? Oh, we didn't get a first one either.
I'll offer the motion to get us.
I'll
going.
second.
With the conditions.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional conversation?
While I think this is probably a thing of the future, it still makes you stop and think.
Yeah. we have to, yeah.
While the pros and cons are still there, there are still cons to it, so it really makes you stop and think.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll just second what everyone else has up here said. I will support it. I do think overall the benefits are way out better, not way, but they're good. That was really professional. That was good. Good. All right, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Sweeter.
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right, with that, we'll now move on to old business. Mr. Brown, do you have anything to discuss? All right, new business. Do you have any updates for the planning commission?
So the monthly item for the comprehensive plan update, I thought I'd go through a couple quick things with you, and then answer any questions that you might have. As I mentioned in last month's meeting, the staff and the consultant did put a pause on the comprehensive plan to think through some land uses that were proposed in the county. But I thought what I would do is kind of update a little bit. I'll try to go to this once here, do the doc cam. So just a real kind of just historical background on this is that Lincoln County, as you're aware, was incorporated on December 30th of 1867. The first comprehensive plan that was adopted by Lincoln County was in 1971. So if my math is correct, it's about 104 years of governance before they decided that planning and zoning was regulations that they wanted to implement in the county. So what I have on the screen now, this was the first future land use map for Lincoln County, which again was adopted in 1971. As you can see, I think what's of most interest to me is that up on the north side, so obviously at that time Sioux Falls hadn't truly coming over what we'll call the boundary of 57th Street to the north. But in that first comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan focused really on the existing rail lines that were in the county. And if you look where essentially Sioux Falls came over into Lincoln County, that comprehensive plan identified that area to be industrial. And so it's interesting to think of if that would have been implemented, if you would have had industrial up in that area, what impact would that have had on the growth of Sioux Falls down into Lincoln County? You'd primarily say it might have shifted the residential that occurred there. The other part that you would say is this probably isn't consistent with what Sioux Falls had planned or what had occurred essentially, because I would say 99% of that northern area up there is residential with commercial, not much of industrial at all in that northern area. So in saying that, you can see how a comprehensive plan is important to growth and development, not just for what I'll call the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County, but also the growth of the cities that are coming into the county. Then in 2000, the county adopted an update to the comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan had this for a future land use map, primarily identified growth areas from the municipalities, and then 3 rural service areas. And again, the rural service areas would be future commercial industrial areas within the county. And as you notice, those didn't coincide with all of the interstate exchanges down the interstate, but they did incorporate essentially what I'll call the growth area, or what would be the urban area or the urban development area. As I mentioned before, in 2000, when the county adopted this comprehensive plan, they had a provision called the essential rezoning test, which essentially required that, or I'm going to say essentially limited all rezones based on the agricultural productivity of the property, and also within these areas. Within implementation, the county did have litigation against the county for not following this comprehensive plan. So then in 2005, they adopted a new comprehensive plan with a new future land use map. And again, this isn't the one that was adopted in 2005. This was the one that was updated in 2011. The primary change is that the growth areas or the city limits had expanded based on the city growth and then based on the city's comprehensive plan. And again, in Lincoln County, there's 9 incorporated municipalities. And so the jurisdiction of essentially the county over the growth and planning of those areas is limited within those communities. But as was mentioned earlier this evening is that state law allows those municipalities to expand beyond their city limits and have platting or subdivision authority up to 3 miles outside of those cities. All of the communities in the growth area have adopted subdivision authority outside of the 3 mile area. The only one that's limited is the city of Sioux Falls because they have a joint jurisdictional agreement with the county. They are less than the 3 miles. Mile and a half would be probably the furthest that they go in their jurisdiction of it. And so that leads us to kind of where we're at today. So this is a draft of the future land use map that was identified through the stakeholder meetings and through the surveys. This was presented to the Board of Commissioners in July as a draft future land use map. As you can see, the biggest change would be, as I've mentioned this before, is that we've incorporated A1 agriculture would be the yellow portion of it. So many people ask all the time is, the future land use map has no color. It's essentially white. Well, that's meant to stay A1 agricultural. But as we've discussed with, the surveys and the stakeholders, they wanted more emphasis placed on those areas being identified as future agricultural areas. The other change would be is that there's some additional nodes for rural service areas placed along the interstate exchanges, essentially going for the 3 miles north of the city of Beersford. The other change is that, as you know, is that we do receive many questions from applicants and from citizens about what are outside of the interstate exchange areas. Is there other areas in the county that would be acceptable for commercial or industrial development? And so the consultant put together some of those areas based off of hard surface roads off of the interstate exchange areas. As you can see, that's primarily in the north growth areas from Canton to the north. And so we've done some discussions with the stakeholders and some additional surveys that we've gotten in. And based on, I think, what the Planning Commission has experienced from different applications this year, there's a lot of concern that we don't want to see development outside of the municipalities, outside of the interstate exchange areas. And so a lot of these areas, if you drive and look at them now, they're primarily agricultural areas. So one of the things that we've internally discussed with the consultant is maybe changing the draft to reflect not putting nodal areas outside of the municipalities and in areas which are truly A1 agricultural areas. So that would essentially be removing they're outside the interstate exchange areas. And I guess I'm not looking for a direct answer today, but I guess any questions. When we did present this to the Board of Commissioners in July, there was the same concern that they had concern with some of these areas being developed out in the agricultural areas, concern that it's going to impact the municipalities. And then also the third point is impacting the municipalities, as was mentioned tonight in the earlier applications. Once the municipalities get there, it's going to be an impact. One of the things that the consultant, though, brought up was the need to preserve these areas, because clearly these areas will more than likely be commercial, industrial areas in the future as the municipalities get out there. But what we've noticed throughout the years is that they also tend, because they're at hard surface roads, be an attractant for residential properties. And so in one area, you would say, well, it's a preservation area. But in the second part of it, you're going to say, but we're also saying that we're going to encourage those types of applications to occur in those areas. Okay? And then probably the third more significant change would be is if you look back to the previous existing comprehensive plan, we had urban expansion areas around the municipalities. And those were really guided by what the municipality had in their underlying comprehensive plan for those areas. One thing that we've noticed, though, that you've noticed, is that we get a lot of requests for rezones in those expansion development areas. And one of the challenges we have is it does meet the underlying city's comprehensive plan, but the city doesn't have the infrastructure capabilities to expand or annex those properties. And then what we also see is, which is what I'll say is the city of T has probably experienced it more than anyone, is that once they annex those, what I'll call pre-developed properties, they have to retrofit them, meaning they have to provide infrastructure, the water, the sewer, the drainage, the roads. And for sure, the city of T has been the one that's experienced it most over the last 5 years. The cost to retrofit those properties is borne by the landowner, but it's also borne by the taxpayers of the existing jurisdiction. And so, and then beyond that is we want to make sure that as the cities grow and expand, and as the county, has land uses, we all know that what we anticipate 20, 30, 40 years, much like I showed that first comprehensive plan, that no one would have ever thought. It would have been beneficial for the county to have that developed as industrial on that northern edge because of the tax base, but it would have severely impacted the growth of Sioux Falls into Lincoln County. And so we want to make sure that when you look at planning, you're not just looking at today, you're looking at how does this impact the future. And so, and in saying that, the easiest way to not impact the future drastically is to be incremental in your growth areas. And so one of the things that I've done as staff is I reached out to the municipalities. We had a staff discussion, invite them then into the office to talk about joint jurisdictional planning and zoning, which by state law is the real mechanism that we can work with municipalities to open up communication, to open up planning, to open up coordination. And so, as you're aware, we do have that with the city of Sioux Falls, and I would say the coordination, the communication, the implementation works really well because of that. I think that staff works well together. I think the planning commissions work well together. I think the elected officials work well together. And I would say because we're forced to, right? Because we all have to work together to either approve or deny different types of applications. And that's at all levels, the staff level and the elected officials level. And so I did reach out to the municipalities and engage them. By no means do we promote that, just say that this is an option that they can utilize to work with us towards development. And as you're aware, and I brought this up to the staffs of the municipalities, over time, we do have applications, and I'll use Canton for an example. We just had an application last year, which is essentially completely surrounded by the city of Canton, but we did have an application from a landowner that was not in the city's jurisdiction, but in the county's jurisdiction, to do a liquor store / rumor to be a medical cannabis dispensary. So by statute, really, the city of Canton had no ability to deny that or approve that, other than to share their thoughts and their wishes with us on it. But with joint jurisdiction, they would sit jointly with the county to make decisions on that. So that's just the method that they can utilize that. So I don't have any really update on that, other than we've talked to the municipalities about if they want to do that. That does require action by the municipalities, and it does require action by the Board of Commissioners. But I think it is a method to achieve that. But in saying that, we've pulled back on those areas so that there is no confusion, that it is preservation of ag and preservation of the A1 agricultural district that would be up to the municipalities' jurisdiction until such time as they annex or develop those properties. With that, I mean, for an example, and I got that completely upside down, but so this is the city of Harrisburg's plan. And this is their 2060, what I call vision. And so as you can see, they've identified growth outside of their municipalities. The yellow areas would be industrial type areas. And so many of those industrial areas are next to residential properties. They're next to different other types of properties. And so with the current comprehensive plan, if an applicant wanted to pursue a change of zone to those areas, they would submit it, work with the city of Harrisburg, much like the applicant earlier today did. And then we would be presented an application that would be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, but it probably would not be consistent with the character of the neighborhood or consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. And so those are the challenges that we have with urban expansion areas, and that's why the consultant and staff is recommending that we continue the current draft of leaving the urban expansion areas off for the growth areas, and really guide the cities more towards annexation or towards joint jurisdictional agreements with the county. So with that, if you have any questions for staff on really kind of the status, my hope is that we typically do a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners December, January timeframe, just to schedule that to kind of to regroup on the comprehensive plan as far as the future land use map, and then we would proceed with more adoption towards the spring. Really, the comprehensive plan is the most important document for Lincoln County. I know I say that repeatedly, but it is, but it's one of those documents that's not controversial. so it doesn't generate the participation that we as staff or we as planners would really like to have. But we do have some good input because we do have surveys and we've gotten some good responses on those. We have had stakeholder meetings with all the interested parties, and we have engaged the Planning Commission with essentially some of the drafting of this future land use map. But in saying that, the most important part of the comprehensive plan is it leads towards the revision or the updates to the zoning regulations. And the zoning regulations is probably the most important thing to the citizens, to the boards, and to everyone we work with, because that's really going to set the rules, the regulations, the standards that we feel that we need at this point in time, but also to achieve this vision or the future land use map that we have before us. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, take some feedback from you guys on kind of draft on the future land use map tonight. Otherwise, we're going to work with the Board of Commissioners to get a joint meeting set up sometime December or January. So, okay? Any comments, I guess? I'll turn it back to the chair, but.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. That was, that was great. You're putting a lot of time and effort, and I know everyone is, but yeah, thank you very much for everything you've been doing. I appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
If you would indulge me. Toby, given legal counsel has left, we have something that is looming very large as a potential area and change. When would you want to present something to this board to address the impact that facility may have in that area? Because it will not be singular in nature. There will be an impact to the adjacent property as well. How much time do you need to prepare? Because I do believe we need to prepare for it.
Well, I think, two parts to that is that really that's the vision of the Planning Commission, the Board of Commissioners, of how they want to see that future area. I guess from staff's perspective is that, outside of any additional infrastructure, which is the concern that we had with the nodes, is that how much additional development are you going to see without infrastructure? But then the second part about it is that we know that that there more than likely is going to be requests from landowners in that area to do certain things with their land. And so we have to be prepared to make sure that we work with all of the landowners to make sure that it's acceptable for what it is. But again, parts of that too might be, there's going to be things that come up land use wise throughout the years. And probably what needs to take place from that perspective is we need more a sub-area plan so that we work with those neighbors and we work with the landowners to identify specific things about that area. So in general, you would proceed with essentially a county comprehensive plan, focus on a sub-area plan for that area.
That's assuming that we accept the change of use, or we could treat it as an island and leave it isolated so that there wouldn't be supporting structure or facilities to it. So, but it's something that this board as well as the commission will have to decide with the input of landowners in that area. But there are two perspectives to that. Allow it to change that area or treat it as an island and make it known to those that are applying for it that it will be an island out there without the supporting structures that may be needed and would be needed to sustain it. Because any facility that's going to have 400 people coming and going as an employee, let alone the individuals that will be residing there for whatever period of time, there's going to be a need for other activities outside of the grounds. So, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, any other comments for staff?
So based on kind of what you guys are thinking, Toby, do we have an anticipated, like, when we would see the new comprehensive plan? Like, how does this change any timelines we've had that in the new comprehensive plan?
Timeline was we wanted to adopt it this year, but we decided to put a pause on it again, so we go through this. But I think with a joint meeting of the elected officials and the Planning Commission, I think we can finalize really the most important part of it, which would be the future land use map. The rest of the comprehensive plan is essentially a snapshot of where we're at today. The consultants are really just drafting those chapters as far as, population projections, all that kind of stuff, school districts, infrastructure, those different types of things. But this is the most important thing, is this map. I mean, and, that's what you're working towards visually. It's the landowners can look at it and see, this is what should be anticipated for my property or my neighbor's property. And then the same thing for any types of investors that might be looking at this. So I think from the standpoint is that we'll probably move forward with taking the nodes off of those areas outside the interstate, unless there's any huge objection to that. And then we'll just try to schedule a joint meeting so that we can continue discussion, so. Okay.
'Cause overall, any nodes outside the interstate would be more likely controlled by the municipals.
At the time, yep.
Yep.
So, plus it prevents, we've heard that over the last few months about just what is the rural character of the area, and so this would be developing uses that are not, prescribed for that area because they don't have the infrastructure to be there, so.
Right.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So the joint working meeting, you'll work with the commission and set that up?
Yeah.
Assuming in January?
Yeah, assume January, probably, yep.
Can it be really cold and snowy that night?
Well, hopefully we'll be here, so.
Okay.
And then the second item that I have, Mr. Chairman, is request to set a public hearing date for a review of conditional use permit 14 CUP 022. This is an existing or approved conditional use permit for a Class 1 major home occupation. Staff does have reason to believe that this particular permit is not in compliance with the conditions that have been established. And per the ordinance, we would set a public hearing review date so that the applicant and staff can present their findings. And then you as the board would decide if that conditional use permit should be essentially upheld, amended, or revoked. And so I'll go into more detail kind of what the conditional use permit is about at the public hearing. So the ordinance requires that you would set it. I believe you can set it for the next December meeting. And then at that time, we'll have to notify the applicant of that time and date. And then we'll also discuss with them kind of the stipulations, so. Okay, but the only action be is to set that public hearing date, if you so choose, for the December meeting. So it'll be December 20th, I think. Oh, you remember now, 18th.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah, yep,
Is that enough time for you?
yep. That'll give us some time, so.
I'd make a motion to set it for that date. Green?
Second, Boots.
Yep, I do agree. I don't think we need to prolong anything that comes in front of our board and put it up the next meeting and get her done. So, yes, Toby, we don't need a vote on that, right? We can. Yeah, vote on it, yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to view the conditional use permit on December 18th. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I'll do roll. Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungley is also a yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.